Good morning and welcome to today's morning writing. I am your live stream accountability partner, Rose Your Music. And this morning I'm going to continue my work on 31 Days of Narratemes, as this is a 100-day marathon of morning writings devoted to this project for me. So I'm just going to pop over here into the live chat to get that primed so that you can share with me what it is you'll be working on this morning and any questions you may have about writing, which will be answered at the end of our morning writing time together. So let me just get that all squared away and let's get started. All right, folks, it is 10:59, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. So what we've got going on in the chat. Sean Shaw dropped in and said, hello, dear friend. Hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good day, too. And let's see what we've got going on. All right, so this morning I started off working on 31 Days of Narratemes, a guided journal for questing the crap out of your daily self-care, which is my project for these 100 days, of which today is day 30. And so today I posted on Inkshares the lesson on villainy and lack, which is the first narrateme to the second sphere of narratemes, or second section of the book, called The Body of the Story. And this is more about what's going on. And while it's called The Body of the Story, that's because what we experience most out of a story is the transformation a hero undergoes from not hero to hero. And so in our own daily lives, this is more of a mindset shift, shifting from being unfocused to being focused, fixed mindset to growth mindset, and just all those ways that we go from a place of rest and a place of taking care of ourselves to a place of being proactive in what's going on in the world around us and in our lives. So that was the first lesson on that, the villainy and the lack. The villainy being that moment of interruption, and the lack being the lack of clarity. So that was the lesson that went up on Inkshares today. And then I sort of did a rehearsal. I muted the mic and I did a rehearsal of the guided visualization that I've written. I'm going to be probably recording that live as a separate video and then sharing that to the Facebook group. Just because I find that, well, today I did a rehearsal of it just reading it to myself, and then I did a rehearsal of reading it to myself while using my Tibetan singing bowl. And I found that using this helped me to pace myself better. And even though it was very subtle in the background, it did help to tie it together in a way and to sort of fill the pauses without life just getting into the recording, basically. And as I was switching over to that, somebody suggested that I try to touch my chin with my tongue. And I told them that's not what the chat is for. So that is that. And then I did some research. These few days where I am in terms of, hey there, Shah, these few days in terms of what I'm working on are planning days and brainstorming days and really foundational work days. So I was doing some research on some Slavic runes, Romani symbols, and Norse runes, but mostly Slavic and Romani symbols for various things. And I don't know how to explain how that research relates to my project, so I'm not going to. I'm still in the brainstorming stage, so how it connects hasn't fully fleshed itself out yet. I'm still working on tying the pieces together, tying the idea to the root, as it were, which we have talked about over the last few days. And yeah, so I just finished looking up what I wanted to look up in terms of Slavic and Romani runes in relation to lunar cycles. Yes, symbols. So here, let me see if I can share this. So I basically went to Pinterest to see what I could find visually. So these are symbols that I'll be using for embroidery projects and for, oh geez, did that even go where I wanted it to go? All right, that goes where I wanted it to go. Fantastic. Yes, so I was looking up, I've just shared the link to the last search that I was doing on Pinterest in terms of runes and symbols and things of that nature. And it was actually something I've been doing for my bullet journaling, and I want to be better. I want to plan ahead better for certain things. And one of those things is that as a woman, I have a monthly cycle. So I was updating my calendar and finding the appropriate symbols to give me a shorthand for tracking that without taking up too much space in my schedule, but wanting symbols that had some weight to them, had some meaning to them. I was doing research on Slavic symbols. So I looked up images on Pinterest, and then I would go to other sources online, starting with Google Translate to translate the name. Right, Slavic symbols. The link I just shared is to Slavic runes. A rune is a type of symbol. The main character in the Da Vinci Code is a symbologist, someone who studies symbols, who knows about the cultural associations of various symbols. So I was looking up a particular grouping of symbols for a particular project, partly my calendar, but that's always something I do with anything I research, is that I first connect it to my life, what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, before I start incorporating it into the lives of a character that I'm building. It's like when a method actor is playing a drunk and gets drunk, only it's method writing, and I'm not getting drunk to write scenes, but it's about just connecting with different cultures and connecting with different ideas in order to get a better idea of how a character would experience those things and live with those things and even talk about them. So I did some research, and specifically I was doing research that was linked directly to my cycle as a woman. So I was taking some very traditional symbols, connecting them to too complex to handle. Well, that's why it's research. This isn't something that I would go in depth explaining when I get to writing a story. My talking about this is what you would call in a book exposition, which too much explanation of why something is the way that it is in a book can disrupt the story. So I'm doing research and looking at all those complexities. That way it becomes part of the muscle memory of the storytelling, and it blends more easily into the background of the story, into the setting, into the world building. So while on the back end, it is very complex, on the front end, on your end, when you're reading the story that will come of this research, you won't notice it as much. It'll be like, holy Christmas, where'd she come up with all these ideas? Like, she came up with these ideas from doing a hell a lot of research. And that's a big part of writing, is reading things and learning things and trying to figure things out. But I shared the Pinterest link because I I like, when it comes to world building, I like to have a very strong visual base to pull from. Um, and then I make the visual real for myself by researching what is behind all the symbols and all the imagery. And then all you see is the visual, all you see is the imagery. I describe the setting. I'll describe a symbol in some embroidery somebody is doing, and it'll mean something to them. It might be something that is revealed later, but it's not necessarily the focus of the story. It's just something I am learning in order to enrich the world that I build, the worlds that I build in my various stories. And runes and symbols of ancient cultures that they used for. How is my novel project going? The one with the supernatural. I believe it's going to be a novella. I believe I've said that before. Sally Forth, I believe, will be a novella. And yesterday, for a good portion of my writing time, was it yesterday? Yes, it was yesterday. Yesterday, I worked on evaluating my upcoming queue of projects, which I've said before was going to be memoir, guidebook on Putting the Puss in Boots, and then it was going to be Sally Forth, which would put it 200 days, well, 270 days away from today in terms of start. And actually slightly more than that because of the rest times in between the 100 days of writing that we're doing together. So that project, I am evaluating it as, I'm going to be evaluating it as well this tomorrow, because tomorrow and the day after are my last two. No, tomorrow's my last of the 4 planning days. Yes? Yes, I need to put the things in. I need to put the things in the calendar, the little symbols that tell me where I am in my month. Silly Rosie. Tricks are for kids. No, tomorrow's only day 31. The day after tomorrow will be the last day of planning. Right. So that book will be getting evaluated tomorrow, but it's possible that it's going to be coming up sooner in my schedule, so that rather than writing a memoir next, because the memoir project has, as it's developed, it's become more of a, we should be blogging, not writing memoirs, just have a blog, have a place to get these things out of your head and share. So that project has converted itself into that, and that's what I'm doing on medium.com, is rather than writing a memoir, I'm just writing about things, mostly healing the hoarding and the OCD. So then with the memoir not coming up next, that means the guidebook would come up next. So I'm evaluating that to see exactly how I'm going to tackle that. And because that's coming up sooner than expected, as in 70 days from now rather than 170 days from now, that means that'll also move up the novel to be in 170 days from now rather than 270 days from now. See, 70 days, that's a little over 2 months. So a little over 2 months left to work on 31 Days of Narratemes, and then I'll have a little over 3 months working on the guidebook, which means that the novel I'd be getting back to that in about 5 months. And that's assuming after I've done the project evaluations that I'm not just swapping in the novel to be next instead of the guidebook, so that I have more time to flesh that out. Because a lot of the ideas, as I'm seeing in evaluating the guidebook, is a lot of the ideas that start that book have actually ended up in my current project, 31 Days of Narratemes. OCD cannot be cured. That's the current understanding of OCD, is that it cannot be cured. But you can learn to manage it. And many people who have milder cases of OCD or fewer compulsions have been able to work with therapists and work through methodologies of their own creation to heal aspects of it and even feel that they have healed themselves completely. When healing OCD, it's mostly healing your relationship with yourself. A lot of people, especially in self-help circles, inadvertently villainize their subconscious minds. The way we talk about ourselves in terms of self-sabotage and the way we talk about ourselves in terms of negative thinking and getting in our own way. And yes, we do those things as a form of self-preservation. And if we can just be respectful of the fact that our brain thinks it's enacting self-preservation, we can actually stop villainizing ourselves and do more progress in terms of healing ourselves, which is what the bulk of 31 Days of Narratemes is all about. And so it cannot be cured, but you can learn to manage it, and it is possible with enough work, effort, and time. Time is always key in healing. You can heal yourself one compulsion at a time. It's very important to take it one step at a time, one iteration at a time, and therefore one compulsion at a time. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, and you want to be focused in whatever improvement that you're attempting to achieve. But OCD, all the literature on OCD says it cannot be cured. You learn to live with it, and you learn to minimize and potentially heal your various compulsions. So my first healing project has been dealing with my hoarding compulsion. And I've done pretty well with that. To my mind, I can still afford to get rid of some things. You should try acting. Facial expressions are perfect. Thank you. I know I have a very expressive face. I come from a family of very facially expressive people. So that's not really new to us. But I have done acting. I have performed on stage. I do perform some of the stories that I write, the shorter stories that I write, the Wonder Tales. And I will be doing a performance or reading, haven't quite decided yet. I have a performance coming up. Let me see if I can pull up the link to that performance date. My friend is putting on a Shakespeare festival locally. And it's too much of a good thing. And so she's putting on a Shakespeare festival. I'll be performing on Saturday of that Shakespeare festival. What is this? This is a Providence Online article. I didn't want this. Providence Online. Where is the event? Does it link to the event in the article, perhaps? That would be nice. Images on. All right. Oh, well, it has all the dates here, so I'll go ahead and share the article with you. La 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 la. I do not believe it will be available on YouTube. I do have some sonnets a series of sonnets that I read for National Poetry Month last year on Periscope. I'm considering whether or not to do something like that again this year, having some sort of poetry reading marathon during April. Just reading poetry every day so that it wouldn't interfere with my current writing project, especially since that would be right at the end of the current 100 writing days and not wanting to lose too much momentum with that project. But I think it would be fun to have a sort of poetry season for a poetry series of some kind for the month of April, whether it's doing readings of poetry, performances of verse, or even giving small lessons on poetry writing on YouTube. I would like to do that. So I would just have to make myself a syllabus and get that done, on top of all the other little things that I'm doing, because I like to distract myself. And right now I need to be refocusing, which is what the project evaluations are all about. Evaluating how the timeline moves up, evaluating what I can and can't do as I finish out these, where'd that page go? As I finish out these 100 days, looking at possible mini projects that can fit in here. Wanting to make a Marian lunar calendar, I would just, all right, so if I just focus on finishing editing 31 Days of Narratemes and get that done by the end of February, which I totally can, that'll give me 2 weeks to work on making a lunar calendar, and I could start off with it just being super simple and straightforward, and would also be good practice in terms of making calendar sheets as prep for working on Putting the Puss in Boots. And then I might give myself more time to work on Putting Puss in Boots. That way I can work on the palmistry for everyday book first. Well, not book. Ebook type thing. Do I research story writing, like adding tension on a scene or adding horror to a horror story? I do and I don't. When I'm working with a form that I've never worked with before, I do research the genre as thoroughly as I can. I look into it like friggin' crazy. The reason actually that I make these live videos right now, and I haven't done any other kind of videos so far with this channel, is because I have time that I set aside and I research, all right, how does a person do a booktube channel? How does a person do a vlog channel? How does a person do a writing workshop channel? And so I'm researching all these other YouTube channels before I try to go into everything else. But that is secondary research. It's not my primary focus right now, isn't adding more to this page. That would probably happen in March. If I'm able to finish editing this book that I'm writing right now by the end of February, then I can jump into making my lunar calendar during the first half of March, get that out in time for the new moon of the vernal equinox. Just have like that first, because it would just be the spring calendar, just to jump in. And then after that, prepping for April and maybe coming up with some sort of poetry series. But when I'm first starting with the genre, when I'm first starting with something that is new to me, I do lots of research on it. And then once it's time for me to get started, I put aside all the research and I just kind of go through my head, what do I remember from all of the research? And I just sort of call to mind, I just think about the genre till I give myself a checklist of what points I need to hit in order for it to fit whatever that genre is, whatever that form is, whatever that medium is. That picture on my back or the one behind me? I have lots of pictures behind me. Let me switch screens so I can point out what all is behind me. All right. That is a little moose head. That is a tree. That is a ballerina of Swan Lake. That is some kind of street cleaner, like turn of the century street cleaner. That is an image of Baba Yaga's hut, which I embroidered myself, designed and embroidered. This is a sort of a wolf man with 4 swords in his back, and it says, "Don't give up." This is a picture of Madonna and Child. This is a hamsa. This is Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. This is a sort of primordial storyteller figure. This is a piece of multimedia art with a quote, I believe it's George Bernard Shaw. And the quote is, "Life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself." The picture above is by Julie Chen? Wait, no, I have her name over here. Her name, Jess X. Chen. She wrote this chapbook, From the Earthworm to the Night, and it's filled with her imagery, which includes, well, is that picture in here? I'm not sure if that picture is actually in here. I haven't finished reading this book yet. I've been taking my time with it because the visuals are so gorgeous. But she made that picture, and it's a tree with roses and birds. And there's a little line about how gardening is an act of rebellion. And then there's a photograph there of Rosemary Clooney, who is my favorite singer, and George Clooney's aunt. I say that because if I ever met George Clooney, I would have to tell him, "Your aunt is my favorite." Like, forget complimenting him on anything that he's done. I would compliment him on having such an awesome aunt. And then this is a picture of a pheasant. Well, it's a picture of 2 pheasants, a ring-necked pheasant, a male and a female. Yeah, so that is that. And then that is a wreath I made out of paper, without tape, without glue, without any adhesives of any kind. They're chain linked in such a way that they just won't come apart. Actually, I have a piece of, this is the kind of paper that I used to make it. And it's 5 times as long as it is wide. And so you square off the end, cut the tab, and make them opposites. And then fold it back on itself, link it up. And the link stays without glue, without tape. And once it's linked like that, because you've squared off the ends, the circumference is now 4 times what the width of the paper is, which means you can fit 4 loops in there perfectly, well, semi-perfectly. I made a memo board out of these things, and I made that wreath. I almost made a Christmas tree and then decided it would take too much, too much paper. I was in a mood. All right. On Wall, Madonna and Child once read an article about connection between literature and artworks. Yes, there's a lot of connection between literature and artwork. There is a particular artist, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, one of the Romantics, and a semi-contemporary of William Morris, who is one of my favorite poets and artists, who also connected a lot of his writing to a lot of his visual art. Dante Gabriel Rossetti insisted on writing poems for most of his paintings, or having paintings for most of his poems. And the most famous pairing is that of Lilith. Let me see if I can find it, because you got to see this. This is beautiful. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, Lilith. And the portrait was in display in a museum in Delaware for a short while. And is that the right painting? Where's the poem? There is... So this is not the version I'm familiar with, this picture here. If you check the little info that comes along with it, it'll come with an inscription, but it's not the usual inscription. Just a minute, I have the book. I have a book. Okay. So this book, Love is Enough, mostly has paintings by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, or at the very least in his style. So that one, that link I just shared, has an image of Lilith looking quite innocent compared to this picture that I wanted to share. She's so very youthful there. And then it has this inscription, "Beware, for she excels all women in the magic of her locks. And when she twines them round a young man's neck, she will never set him free again." But the version of that painting that is the more famous is this, where she's looking much more glamorous, much more of a seductress type. And the poem is titled "Body's Beauty," or at least in this book. "Of Adam's first wife Lilith it is told, the witch he loved before the gift of Eve, that ere the snakes her sweet tongue could deceive, and her enchanted hair was the first gold. And still she sits, young while the earth is old, and subtly of herself contemplative, draws men to watch the bright web she can weave, till heart and body and life are in its hold. The rose and poppy are her flowers, for where is he not found, O Lilith, whom shed scent and soft shed kisses and soft sleep shall snare? Lo, as that youth's eyes burned at thine, so went thy spell through him, and left his straight neck bent, and round his heart one strangling golden hair." This version of the painting was on display in Delaware for a time when I still lived there. And the frame of the painting had this poem in an inscription at the bottom of the frame. And it was really just part of that insistence of the literature and the paintings being combined. But everybody has their primary art form. Even if they engage in multiple art forms, Dante Gabriel Rossetti was primarily a painter, or he primarily became a painter. His trajectory is a little tricky, but there are so many connections between the various arts. And that's part of the reason I moved to Providence, and particularly to the artist community AS220, a nonprofit founded by artists for artists. And I moved here because I wanted to be surrounded by other artists and to talk about various creative ideas, and to just not be caught in a vacuum of that common vacuum of being a writer and only talking to other writers, which can happen in any industry, in any art form. So I just wanted to. You're a living genius. I am not a living genius. I just know a lot. No video, only sound. I noticed that, and it should be back up now. According to my end of things, I managed to fix that. Expected Mona Lisa on my wall. That's... Sometimes I expect Mona Lisa on my wall, but no, it's the Madonna. I'm not actually altogether impressed with the Mona Lisa, if I'm gonna be honest. I really like Da Vinci. Um, the Mona Lisa is not my favorite. Uh, People being all caught up in the Mona Lisa smile. It's yeah, I prefer all the little winks and nods that he put into the Sistine Chapel. I prefer that infinitely to the Mona Lisa. Um, because he was a bit of a tricker pants. He was a bit of a tricker pants. He had ideas that were not strictly in keeping with the politics of the day, and he just did what he wanted to do and was just full of ideas and crazy inventions that, we look at today and they never would have worked, but the idea of like the principle at work in his thinking that led to the inventions that he described was amazing. It is well crafted. I'm not saying it's not well crafted. I'm not saying it doesn't have his meticulous mathematical eye for proportion. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's not my favorite. Um, we we discussed before in a previous day that the Da Vinci Code is full of a lot of good ideas that aren't strung together as elegantly as they could be. Uh, and one of the things, the Da Vinci Code helped to make people realize, oh, Da Vinci wasn't just this artist dude who had these crazy inventions. He actually understood mathematics. He actually understood, you know, what was known of physics in the day. He he was literally a Renaissance man. He lived in the Renaissance, and he was a Renaissance man. The idea of the Renaissance man being someone who is capable at a lot of things. Um, but just because he's capable of a lot of things, and just because we make connection as in his work, doesn't mean I just I like Da Vinci a lot. I like Da Vinci a lot. It's just not my favorite. And I'm allowed to say that this work that this artist did, not my favorite. I like everything else they did. Um, just a little bit more, You're allowed to look at somebody's their oeuvre, their collection of works, and say that you like some things more than others and some things less than the rest. And I understand empirically that Mona Lisa is a masterpiece. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Like, you can't please everybody, and Da Vinci knew that. If he thought that he could please everybody, then he wasn't actually a genius, because a real genius doesn't believe that they can please everybody. That's just a fool's errand, trying to please everyone. So, whoa, okay. It is now 11:38, and we've been talking quite a bit. Caught you up on what I'm working on, answered some questions. And I believe that I'm going to log off now and I'm going to get to the rest of my day because I do have laundry to do. So yeah, hashtag adulting. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good journey, my friends.